Welcome back. You know what? Let's do it now. Hey, before I forget, the next part of the super secret code is the capital letter K, as in Kovac. The capital letter K. One more time. The capital letter K. Don't use lowercase, use capital. Proceeding. Let's talk about the Silurian period. So by the middle of the Silurian, this is kind of what Earth is looking like. Around 425 million years ago. See North America kind of cruising towards, or what would later become North America, Laurentia cruising towards Gondwana, what would later become Africa, the Middle East, India, Antarctica, Australia, etc. So we get these things starting to collide together. We're starting to eventually, later on, form Pangea, but these things are kind of creeping together. So North America, here's the equator. We're still south of the equator, but again, we can see we've rotated and kind of moved up a little bit. Here's where modern-day Arizona would be located. So coming out of the Ordovician and the extinction event, the glaciation receded. During the Silurian, we start to get a rise in the atmospheric carbon dioxide and oxygen. Things are starting to stabilize a bit into the atmosphere, but we still get some variations before we kind of get into a more stable environment. Okay, so 443.8 to 419.2 million years ago marks the Silurian period. We actually start to get an ozone layer. All right, we actually didn't have that before. The ozone layer, as it currently is, actually helps to reflect some of the nasty rays of the sun. Not all of them. The light's coming through, some UV rays are coming through. But without that ozone, we would get a lot more radiation from the sun. Everything would be burnt to a crisp. You know, we wouldn't be able to go outside, or our skin would burn, sunburn, and get cancer, etc. So anyway, the ozone layer is a good thing. Too much of it, not necessarily a good thing, but the ozone layer began to become created, and the concentration of that material, which is O3, 3 oxygens, I believe, began, and that's going to help facilitate getting more things on land. Because if there's too many harsh rays on land, things aren't going to want to live outside the water. They're going to want to stay in the water. All right. So again, generally speaking, the climate is beginning to stabilize as we kind of continue on in the Paleozoic. Things are beginning to warm, so those glaciers were melting, so we get sea level rise again. The life that we see in the Silurian, corals are really flourishing in the ocean. You get a bunch of different types of corals as well. Fish continue to evolve. So again, still mostly, when we're talking about animal organisms, corals are actually tiny little animals. Animals still mostly in the ocean. We get a number of different types of fish, both without and with a jaw. We start to get freshwater fish, so some things are making their way up streams that exist on the land, but fish still live in water. On land, remember we only had like little mossy type plants. We're starting to get vascular plants, things with. So what helps me remember this? Our vascular system is like our veins, right? So vascular plants are plants that have not necessarily veins, but transport systems that can move water and food, sugar essentially, throughout the plant. That's going to allow these plants to grow taller now that you can move water and food around. We'll look at that in a little bit. Just to reference some of the life in the ocean, just to give you a size, here's a kind of an average human, and you can see the size of some of these different fishes and also some of these weird creatures and some of these other sea life plants and trilobites and bivalves. So it kind of, imagine swimming around seeing this weird shrimp lobster thing. These are examples of different type of fossilized corals from this time. You can see the kind of diversification. These are called rugose or horn corals. You get a lot of these. These kind of pop up, but some of these other coral varieties as well. Again, we start to see fish with jaws. Some of these mean little creatures that, with sharp skull teeth. They weren't like individual teeth. They were like just sharp parts of the skull. It was weird. But anyway, you start to see these things start to kind of evolve again. What normal fish kind of look like before they didn't have any jaws. And then on land, again, we're just getting still plants. These are kind of an artist's rendition of what some of the early vascular plants are. They can grow tall. They're not just like the low little mosses and things that would grow on the ground. We're starting to get plants with a vascular system that can transport water and food and through their roots up through the organism, so these plants can start to grow taller. But again, for the most part, land is still pretty much barren, except for some vascular plants that are now starting to take hold. Again, previously to that, they were all non-vascular, so mosses and things like that. But now that we have vascular plants with phloem and xylem, we can transport water and food, sugar, essentially. Excuse me. So again, that's kind of what's going on into the Silurian with the kind of the fishes and the corals. And then as we get into the Devonian in the next period, we're going to start to talk about amphibians and some insects actually start to pop up. So now we're starting to get animals moving onto land, not just plants. And again, the plants, we're still kind of early on, but we will start to get more vascular things as we proceed into the Devonian, which is the next section. So we'll pause right here, and I'll see you back here in just a second.